Most people think addiction has a face. They picture someone hunched over in a dark alley, a syringe in their arm, or someone whose life has been consumed by alcohol or narcotics. We have been taught that addiction is easy to recognize because it leaves visible scars. It destroys careers, relationships, and health in ways that everyone can see. But what if the most dangerous addiction doesn't look like addiction at all? What if millions of people are trapped in a cycle every single day without realizing they're addicted? They wake up with it. They carry it to work. They take it to bed. They feel anxious when it's gone and relieved the moment it returns. Society doesn't condemn this addiction. In fact, it rewards it. Entire industries are built around keeping it alive. Governments benefit from it. Corporations compete for it. Algorithms are designed to strengthen it. Unlike drugs, you don't have to search for it. It follows you everywhere, fitting neatly into your pocket, sitting on your desk, waiting beside your bed. It asks for nothing more than a glance, a single tap, one quick notification. But behind that harmless interaction lies one of the most sophisticated psychological traps ever engineered. A trap capable of changing how you think, how you feel, how you see yourself, and even how you experience reality. The most dangerous addiction isn't cocaine. It isn't heroin. It isn't alcohol. It is the addiction to constant stimulation. And because it has become normal, almost nobody recognizes just how much of their life it has already stolen. Human beings did not evolve to live in a world of endless entertainment. For nearly all of history, boredom was unavoidable. Waiting for food meant waiting. Traveling meant hours or days with nothing but your own thoughts. Standing in line meant observing the people around you. Even moments of silence served a purpose. They allowed the brain to process memories, organize information, and imagine the future. Neuroscientists now believe these quiet moments activate what is known as the default mode network, a system deeply involved in creativity, self-reflection, and long-term planning. But over the last 2 decades, silence has almost disappeared. Every spare second can now be filled with scrolling, streaming, gaming, texting, watching, listening, or refreshing. Waiting has become unbearable because stimulation is always available. The moment boredom appears, we eliminate it. Standing in an elevator becomes an opportunity to check social media. Waiting at a red light becomes an excuse to open another app. Even walking through a park often involves headphones, podcasts, or videos. We've become so uncomfortable with stillness that many people haven't spent more than a few uninterrupted minutes alone with their thoughts in years. We assume this constant stimulation is harmless because it feels productive or entertaining. But every time we escape boredom, we teach our brains an important lesson. Silence is something to avoid. Over time, that lesson fundamentally changes how our minds operate. To understand why this addiction is so powerful, we need to understand dopamine. Dopamine is often called the brain's pleasure chemical, but that description is misleading. Dopamine isn't primarily about pleasure. It's about anticipation. It motivates you to seek rewards before you receive them. Thousands of years ago, this system helped humans survive. Finding food, discovering water, exploring unfamiliar environments, and building relationships all triggered dopamine because these behaviors increased the chances of survival. Evolution designed this system for a world where rewards were rare and unpredictable. But modern technology has learned how to exploit that ancient circuitry. Every notification, every new video, every refreshing news feed, every loot box, every swipe, every like, and every message creates a tiny burst of anticipation. The reward isn't even the content itself. It's the possibility that something exciting might appear next. This is exactly the same psychological principle used in slot machines. You pull the lever not because you know you'll win, but because you might. That uncertainty keeps the brain engaged far longer than guaranteed rewards ever could. Social media platforms, streaming services, mobile games, and recommendation algorithms are built around this principle. They don't simply entertain you. They train your brain to crave the next piece of stimulation before you've even finished the current one. Without realizing it, millions of people have become participants in the largest behavioral experiment in human history. The frightening part is that this addiction doesn't just consume time. It reshapes attention itself. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess because it determines what your brain considers important. Every memory you form, every skill you develop, Every relationship you build depends on sustained attention. Yet today's digital environment constantly fragments it. Instead of focusing deeply on one task, people bounce between emails, messages, videos, headlines, advertisements, and social feeds hundreds of times each day. Researchers have found that even brief interruptions can significantly reduce cognitive performance, making it harder to solve problems, remember information, or enter states of deep concentration. Over time, the brain begins adapting to constant novelty. Long books feel difficult. Conversations become harder to follow. Quiet evenings become uncomfortable. Many people assume they've become less disciplined, when in reality their attention has been conditioned to expect a constant stream of new stimuli. This creates an endless cycle. The less able you are to focus, the more you seek quick bursts of entertainment because they require almost no mental effort. And the more entertainment you consume, the harder sustained focus becomes. Eventually, distraction stops feeling like a choice. It becomes your default mental state. Perhaps the greatest danger of all is that this addiction disguises itself as normal life. Drug addiction often isolates people from society. Stimulation addiction does the opposite. It integrates perfectly into everyday routines. You're expected to answer messages immediately. You're encouraged to stay informed about every breaking story. Your job may require constant online availability. Your friends communicate through apps designed to maximize engagement. Even moments intended for rest become opportunities for more consumption. As a result, very few people ever question whether something is wrong. They simply assume feeling mentally exhausted, emotionally restless, and unable to concentrate is a natural consequence of modern living. But imagine explaining today's lifestyle to someone from just 100 years ago. Imagine telling them that millions of people voluntarily spend several hours each day staring into glowing rectangles, consuming information they will barely remember, comparing themselves to strangers, interrupting conversations to check notifications, and feeling anxious whenever those devices are unavailable. They might conclude that society had developed a widespread psychological dependency. And perhaps they would be right. Because unlike addictions of the past, this one doesn't need to destroy your life overnight. It simply takes a tiny piece of it every single day, until one morning you realize years have disappeared, your attention belongs to someone else, and you've forgotten what it feels like to simply exist without reaching for another distraction. If constant stimulation only affected attention, the damage would already be significant. But its influence reaches much deeper than that. It quietly changes the way we experience happiness itself. Happiness has always depended on contrast. A warm meal feels satisfying because you've experienced hunger. Rest feels rewarding because you've experienced effort. Success feels meaningful because you've experienced failure. The human brain was designed to appreciate rewards that follow periods of patience, struggle, or uncertainty. Constant stimulation destroys that balance. When your brain receives endless streams of novelty throughout the day, its baseline expectations begin to rise. Suddenly, ordinary life starts feeling dull. A walk outside isn't stimulating enough. Reading a book feels too slow. Having dinner with family becomes difficult without checking your phone. Sitting alone with your thoughts feels almost unbearable. Activities that brought joy for thousands of years begin losing their emotional impact because they cannot compete with systems specifically engineered to maximize engagement. Psychologists refer to this as hedonic adaptation. The more intense your stimulation becomes, the less satisfying normal experiences feel. This creates an impossible chase. Every new source of entertainment must become faster, louder, more personalized, and more emotionally charged than the last. But no matter how much stimulation you consume, the feeling never lasts. Instead of becoming happier, you simply raise the threshold required to feel entertained. Eventually, life itself begins to seem disappointingly quiet compared to the digital world you've trained your brain to expect. And when reality starts losing to artificial stimulation, the addiction has already taken hold. Perhaps nowhere is this more obvious than in social media. These platforms were originally marketed as tools for connection, promising to bring people closer together regardless of distance. In many ways, they succeeded. Never before in human history has it been possible to communicate instantly with someone on the other side of the planet. Yet despite being more connected than ever, surveys consistently show rising levels of loneliness, especially among younger generations. This seems contradictory until you understand the difference between connection and interaction. Genuine human connection requires presence, vulnerability, listening, and shared experiences. Social media often replaces these with likes, comments, short videos, and carefully edited snapshots of life. Instead of building relationships, people begin performing them. Every vacation becomes content. Every meal becomes a photo. Every achievement becomes a post waiting for validation. The brain slowly learns to measure experiences not by how meaningful they feel, but by how they might appear to other people. This transforms identity itself into a performance. The question quietly shifts from "Am I happy?" to "Do I look happy?" And because everyone else is presenting their own carefully curated highlights, comparison becomes unavoidable. You aren't comparing your real life to someone else's real life. You're comparing your everyday reality to the most polished moments hundreds of strangers have chosen to display. No matter how successful, attractive, or accomplished you become, there will always be someone whose online life appears better. The result is a permanent sense of falling behind in a race that doesn't actually exist. This addiction also changes something far more subtle: our relationship with discomfort. Every meaningful achievement requires the ability to tolerate unpleasant emotions. Learning an instrument involves frustration. Building a business requires uncertainty. Maintaining relationships demands patience. Getting physically stronger means enduring temporary pain. Throughout history, these uncomfortable experiences shaped resilient individuals capable of solving difficult problems. But today, discomfort rarely lasts more than a few seconds before we escape it. Feeling bored? Open your phone. Feeling anxious? Watch another video. Feeling lonely? Scroll endlessly. Feeling uncertain? Search for reassurance online. Instead of learning to sit with difficult emotions, we learn to anesthetize them through constant stimulation. Unfortunately, emotions don't disappear simply because we distract ourselves. They wait patiently beneath the surface. Anxiety postponed is still anxiety. Grief ignored is still grief. Insecurity buried beneath entertainment quietly continues influencing every decision we make. Over time, many people lose confidence in their own ability to handle emotional discomfort because they rarely give themselves the opportunity to practice. Ironically, the very tools we use to escape negative feelings often make us less capable of facing them when they inevitably return. Mental resilience, much like physical strength, only develops through resistance. Remove every challenge, and the muscles, both physical and psychological, gradually weaken. Children growing up today may become the first generation in history to never truly experience uninterrupted boredom. Tablets entertain toddlers before they can speak. Algorithms learn their preferences before they can read. By the time many teenagers reach adulthood, thousands of hours have already been spent consuming perfectly optimized digital content. This raises a question that scientists are only beginning to investigate. What happens when an entire generation develops inside an environment designed to compete for attention every waking moment? Creativity has historically emerged from empty space. Great ideas often appear during long walks, quiet evenings, or moments when the mind is free to wander without external input. But if every spare second is immediately filled with stimulation, when does the brain have time to connect ideas in new ways? Some psychologists worry that constant consumption may gradually replace imagination with reaction. Instead of creating, people consume. Instead of reflecting, they refresh. Instead of questioning, they absorb. None of this means technology is inherently harmful. Technology has improved medicine, education, communication, and scientific discovery in extraordinary ways. The danger lies not in the tools themselves, but in allowing those tools to dominate every moment of consciousness. A hammer can build a home or destroy one. The outcome depends entirely on who is holding it and whether they remain in control. There is another reason this addiction is uniquely dangerous. Unlike drugs, it rarely convinces people they have a problem. Ask someone addicted to heroin whether heroin affects their life, and eventually they may admit that it does. Ask someone who spends 8 hours a day scrolling through social media, checking notifications every few minutes, watching videos late into the night, and feeling unable to concentrate on a single task whether they are addicted, and many will simply shrug. Everyone does it, they'll say. That sentence should concern us more than almost any statistic. History shows that the most powerful cultural habits are often the ones least likely to be questioned. When unhealthy behavior becomes normal, it disappears into the background of everyday life. Smoking was once considered fashionable. Excessive sugar consumption was once ignored. Sleep deprivation is still worn like a badge of honor in many industries. Constant stimulation may one day join that list. Future generations might look back in disbelief that billions of people willingly surrendered their attention to machines specifically designed to keep them engaged for as long as possible. They may wonder why nobody noticed sooner. Or perhaps they will understand exactly why. After all, addictions are rarely built on obvious destruction. The most effective ones are built on comfort, convenience, and tiny daily habits so insignificant that no single moment seems dangerous. Only when those moments are added together over years does the true cost finally become impossible to ignore. So, if constant stimulation is the addiction, what does recovery actually look like? The answer isn't throwing your phone into a lake or abandoning modern technology forever. Technology is not the enemy. The problem begins when technology stops being a tool and starts becoming the environment in which you live. Imagine carrying a hammer everywhere you go. You eat with it, sleep beside it, bring it to dinner, and never let it leave your hand. Eventually, the hammer is no longer serving you. You are serving it. Our relationship with stimulation often follows the same pattern. The first step toward breaking the cycle is simply becoming aware of how often your attention is being pulled away without your permission. For one day, notice every impulse to unlock your phone. Count how many times you reach for it during moments of boredom, discomfort, or uncertainty. Most people are shocked by the number, not because they consciously decided to check it, but because the action has become automatic. Habits repeated thousands of times eventually bypass conscious thought altogether. The brain creates shortcuts to conserve energy, turning intentional choices into unconscious routines. That's why many people unlock their phones without remembering why they picked them up in the first place. Their body has already completed the habit before their mind has caught up. Awareness interrupts that automation. The moment you notice the impulse instead of immediately acting on it, you regain something that addiction quietly steals from every person who falls into it: choice. Recovery begins not with dramatic change, but with a single moment of awareness repeated often enough that it becomes stronger than the habit itself. One of the most powerful antidotes to this addiction is something most people spend their lives trying to avoid: boredom. At first glance, boredom feels useless. It is uncomfortable, slow, and sometimes even frustrating. Yet boredom performs a function that modern life has almost erased. It creates space for the mind to wander. Studies suggest that when external stimulation decreases, the brain begins connecting ideas in unexpected ways. Memories are organized. Problems are processed subconsciously. Creative insights emerge seemingly out of nowhere. Many of history's greatest discoveries did not happen while people were frantically consuming information. They happened during quiet walks, long baths, peaceful evenings, or moments when the mind had room to think without interruption. Isaac Newton wasn't scrolling through endless headlines when he developed the foundations of classical physics. Albert Einstein often described the importance of imagination over mere accumulation of facts. Even today, countless entrepreneurs, artists, and scientists report that their best ideas arrive when they step away from constant input rather than seeking more of it. But boredom offers something even more valuable than creativity. It forces you to become reacquainted with yourself. Without notifications competing for your attention, your own thoughts finally become audible again. At first, this can be unsettling. Many people discover worries, regrets, or unanswered questions they've spent years distracting themselves from. Yet facing those thoughts is not a sign that something is wrong. It is often the first sign that genuine healing has begun. Growth requires reflection, and reflection requires silence. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of constant stimulation is not the hours it steals, but the life it quietly replaces. Think about the moments that define a meaningful existence. Falling in love, watching a sunrise, laughing with close friends until your stomach hurts, building something difficult over months or years, reading a book that permanently changes the way you think. sitting beside someone you care about without feeling the need to fill every second with noise. None of these experiences compete well with algorithms designed to capture attention. They unfold slowly. They require patience. They demand presence. Yet these are precisely the moments people remember when looking back on their lives. Almost nobody reaches old age wishing they had spent more time refreshing social media, watching one more recommended video, or checking one more notification before bed. What they long for are experiences that required their full attention. Real conversations, real adventures, real failures, real victories. Attention is the currency of life because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Spend years paying attention to trivial distractions, and trivial distractions become your life. Spend years paying attention to meaningful work, genuine relationships, and personal growth, and those become your life instead. Every moment you choose where to place your attention, you are quietly choosing the person you are becoming. The companies competing for your attention understand something that many people never realize. They are not selling products. They are competing for minutes, seconds, and eventually entire years of your existence. Every notification is a bid for your awareness. Every autoplay feature is another attempt to keep you engaged just a little longer. Every recommendation has been optimized through enormous amounts of data to predict what will prevent you from leaving. None of this is accidental. The world's brightest engineers, psychologists, designers, and data scientists spend their careers making digital experiences more difficult to abandon. This is not because they are evil, but because attention has become one of the most valuable commodities in history. The longer they keep your eyes on a screen, the more valuable those moments become. In a sense, your attention has become a marketplace where thousands of companies compete every day without you even noticing the auction taking place. And if attention determines the quality of your thoughts, your relationships, your productivity, and ultimately your happiness, then protecting it may be one of the most important responsibilities of modern life. We lock our doors to protect our homes. We use passwords to protect our money. Yet many of us allow unlimited access to the very thing that shapes every experience we'll ever have, our own minds. Perhaps that should concern us more than anything else. So, what is the most dangerous addiction? It isn't necessarily the one that kills the fastest. It's the one that quietly convinces you it isn't an addiction at all. The one that asks for only a few minutes, but gradually takes years. The one that doesn't destroy your future overnight, but slowly replaces it with endless distraction. Drugs can devastate lives, and their dangers should never be minimized. But they affect a relatively small percentage of the population. Constant stimulation reaches almost everyone. It influences children before they can read, adults before they leave bed, and elderly people trying to stay connected with family. It reshapes attention, relationships, creativity, emotional resilience, and even our ability to simply sit in silence. Yet there is hope hidden inside this realization. Unlike many addictions, this one can often be weakened by something surprisingly simple: reclaiming your attention one moment at a time, putting the phone down during dinner, taking a walk without headphones, reading 10 pages instead of watching 10 videos, allowing yourself to be bored long enough for your own thoughts to return. These actions seem insignificant, but they restore something priceless. They remind you that your attention belongs to you, not to an algorithm, not to a corporation, and not to a machine. Because in the end, your life is nothing more than the sum of what you choose to pay attention to. Guard that attention carefully. It is the one resource that, once spent, can never be earned back.